So day before yesterday, I was in my mom. Day before yesterday, I was out with my mom, and we were in like a tea shop. So where I live, there's like cafeterias all over the place, and like you can drink tea, you can eat some food, you can order some food like sandwiches and stuff. Like it's a cafe, but it's not like a branded cafe like Starbucks or something. It would be like I live in Abu Dhabi, so there's like Abu Bashara or like Tea Trend or Tea Spike or some other names, right? So I was basically there. It's very cheap to have a it's like a 1 dirham. So Abu Dhabi has like a dirham, and it's like the equivalent of like 10 rupees or like 10 cents, right? So I'm having tea with my mom, and I thought, okay, you know what? I'll just ask her a deep question. And I just asked her, okay, if you had 24 hours left to live, what would you do? You can't spend your time with anybody. You're not allowed to speak, like, generally speak to anybody. But if you had 24 hours left to live, what's the one activity you're gonna do? And I could immediately see her face like just light up with like curiosity, and like she starts smiling, thinking like, okay, what would I do? And then she was like brainstorming in her own head, and then she gave me the answer that, okay, I'll just pray, because she's like a very religious person, so she'll just pray and like, thank God for everything, and get ready and like read all her favorite like documents. I'm Hindu, so we used to read like Sanskrit documents. I'm not that religious, but like my mom reads that all the time. It's amazing. So she said she would read that and spend her time doing that. Then I thought, okay, fine, one activity is a bit too less. What if we had two activities to do? Then she was like, what would I do? Then she thought, okay, fine, I will eat a lot of good food, make myself feel really nice and everything. And then I asked the third thing, and then she said like, oh yeah, she'll just like make some stuff for me and everything. And generally asking this question was very easy for me, and that's the real weird part. When you ask people like good questions, it's very easy to ask them this question, but the answer they give you make you know them like on a personal deep level if you ask the right questions. So the first way you can get close to your parents is simply to just ask them lots of deep questions every now and then. Chances are, if you're a guy on self-improvement, or you're just a son or a daughter, right, and you're a teenager, chances are you don't necessarily talk to your parents that much. As it's not a sad like reality, it's just that you have your own life, they have their own life, and your lives don't really like correlate with each other. Teenagers are interested in some other stuff, adults are interested in some other stuff. So by nature, you don't really get into that many conversations. Obviously, some of you might have like really bad relationships with your parents, and some of you might have really good ones. Regardless, the true like universal fact is like most teenagers aren't really like besties with their parents. So your talking time isn't that much. When you're with your friends, you talk to them a lot. So chances are, just by talking to them a lot, by nature, you're just gonna get to know them more. But because you don't really have that much time to talk to your parents, you need to force some questions that like make efficient use of the time. So you can't really ask like, how are you? Because you don't even spend that much time with them. So if you ask them like, oh, how are you? How was your day? It's like, sure, you can ask them, but then it's not a very like time efficient, like effective thing for the amount of time you have. You need to do like the 80-20, which is basically asking them very deep questions, like the one I did. It doesn't have to be like personal or like some story about their life. You could do that, but it should just be something like an open-ended question where they can really think about it and answer creatively. You can just copy the first question I said. It's like if you died in 24 hours, what would the last activity you do be? And then you can switch up that question and be like, oh yeah, what are the 3 activities you do? Or you can switch up and make it about people. Or if you were dying in 24 hours, what's the one person you'll spend time with that's not your family? Because chances are you would spend time with your family. So just to make the question a little bit more interesting, what's the one person you would spend time with that's not your family? And then what's the second person you spend time with, and the third person you spend time with? And another question could be like, okay, what's one memorable moment you had from your childhood, or what's one of the worst moments you had in your childhood? Obviously, you should ask this based on how close you are. Don't be autistic and be like, oh well, Kaushi told me to ask this one question, and then you ask it, and it's way too personal relative to your relationship with that person. So just use your intuition, use like the 5 brain cells you have, and simply just think like, okay, how close am I to this person, and what am I allowed to ask her? For example, if this was a random person, I can't necessarily immediately ask them like, what's one thing you really, really like dislike about your parents? Or like, what's one thing you really dislike about yourself? It's like, these are very personal questions, and even if they don't want to shit on their parents or themselves, it's like you're just making them think negatively, which if you just met them is not necessarily a good thing. So start getting more into conversations, even without your parents. If you can just practice that skill in your head of just asking questions to random people, even if it's like the guy you see at the grocery store, or your friend, or your best friend, or your sister, or your brother, or like someone you know, just ask them a really deep question that's like not necessarily like that personal, but it gets them thinking. Because a lot of us, we're just throwing out how are you, how was your days and stuff, which work, right? Sometimes it's good to talk about the day, but then you can spice up the conversation and like power level that like the the progress bar of that relationship by simply just asking them like really like nice questions. I'll give you a few questions just so you have like some templates, and then you can really just think of random questions. I'm not gonna mention the ones that I just said. You can be like, if you could meet three people in the world, what would it be? What would you do different to that so that your daughter or your son grows differently from you? So the question could be like, what would you do differently to your son or daughter so that they're different from you? And obviously you don't want to change them 24/7, like change the daughter or son like all, but like completely. But the thing is, there's something you don't like about yourself or something you've done that you don't want your parents or your son to make the mistake or your daughter to make the mistake. So what would you do, or like what would that thing be, and what would you do to change that in your son or daughter? Another question could be like it could be like a fun question like, oh yeah, what food means the most to you and why? Then you can then they're like, it's like a stupid question, right? But then you really think like, okay, what food does mean the most to me? I really like eggs because they're very tasty. You can make them I really like them because they give me a lot of testosterone, and it's like something I care about. So obviously my answer is pretty like ass, but then other people might have like really sentimental answers. You can also ask them, what's your favorite beverage, and why do you like this beverage? I like tea because I've been drinking tea since I was like 3, 4, 5. And it's just a tradition for my life, and I just love drinking tea just for the sake of drinking tea. So you can ask these questions to random people, and you can just think of your own creative questions, and this way you'll get that other person talking. And if they're a good friend, and if they're nice, and obviously just because they don't do this, it doesn't mean they're a bad friend. But if they ask you the question back, it just improves your relationship too, because not only did you get close to them, they're also getting close to you by knowing what you like and what you think about the same question. The second way you can get close to your parents is by finding a common interest. Now, if you don't know what a common interest is and what the definition really is, it's just basically two interests or the two hobbies or two things that you find like that you both like that's common, right? Common means like it's the same, like yeah. So you and your friend, you probably like playing video games, right? So that's a common interest. If you both like the same specific video game, let's say Warframe, that means that you both like Warframe, and that's a common interest. And this way you have something to talk about. If it's just video games, then nice, good, because now you can talk about video games. But if it's even like smaller than that, like more concise and specific, like, oh yeah, I like Warframe, that's a common interest. And if you both like grinding levels inside Warframe, that's even more of a common interest. Like it's like small, like it's like you take off the onion rings and you get to the core of the apple or the onion. I don't fucking know the analogies, you get the idea. So the more like core interest you have that's common, the more closer you guys can be, because there's more something specific to talk about. If you don't know someone, what do you generally do? You ask some questions, you find a common interest, and then you start talking about that common interest. Hey, do you watch Netflix? Oh yeah, what Netflix show do you watch? Oh, I like watching You. You is a Netflix show. Oh, I love You too. I love the characters. I love Joe Goldberg. I love Guinevere Beck. I love these guys. And what do you think about the show? Who's your favorite character? And automatically, because you figured out that you have this one common interest, you can start talking about that common interest, and you can start getting into conversations. And now you can do the same thing with your parents. Chances are you don't necessarily know the common interests you guys have unless you went and did something, which is good. But chances are there's a lot of common interests that you don't know, and they're buried under like non-spoken about conversations. So then ask them questions like, oh yeah, what's your favorite type of food? And then you can be like, oh yeah, I love that type of food too. And they probably know that, but generally be like, oh, I love that type of food, why do you like it? And you can just use the same analogy that I said with the friends with here. If your parents played a video game when they were young, ask them why they liked the video game. Like, my mom used to play Pac-Man, so she loved Pac-Man when it came out. So I could just ask her more questions about Pac-Man. So when I was a kid, I just asked her like, oh yeah, why do you like this game and everything? So you can just simply just find a common interest that you guys like. And since you know a lot about that topic, and they also know a good amount of information about that topic, you can just get into a conversation and you can get closer to your parents. This is like a very simple but like straightforward way. These are like common sense type things, but the problem is we don't really like use them or think about them because we just get so used to the relationship we have with our parents because they've been there like our whole lives, right? I'm 18 years old, so for like 18 years of my life, my parents just been like there in the background 24/7. So I kind of got used to them. But if it was my friend who's just somewhere, sometimes there, sometimes not there, we improve the relationship because there's this gap of where I don't meet them, so I miss them. But my parents are like always there. So what you can do is just simply just ask them like one small deep question. Even if your relationship with them is not that great, chances are they still love you because you're their son. Biologically, they have to love you in like even like a minuscule way. They have to. So all you can do is just simply ask them like, oh yeah, what's your favorite type of tea and why do you like it? like, when's the first time you drank tea? And they'll be like, oh yeah, the first time I drank tea when I was like 4 years old. My grandmother made it for me, and they used this type of tea leaves, and it was really good. So like these small cute questions really get your relationship going. If you like this video and you want to see more, you can go click this video right now. Press the subscribe button, because I heard that if you say press the subscribe button lights up. I don't know if it's just for like big YouTubers, but hopefully it's small YouTubers. You can go see. Press the subscribe button, hit that subscribe button. You know, you gotta hit that subscribe button. Press it. It's right there. And click the like button if you like the video. Click the dislike button if you dislike the video. And if you want to see more videos of mine without subscribing, you go click my face down there. A bunch of my other videos are there with different topics, self-improvement, everything. Bye bye.